Welcome to this GoPowercat Live. I'm Fitz. That's Coles. There's dogs in here. Linkon Cure is a Wildcat. I think that's what we all are here for. Cole, okay, let's admit it. The 24/7 sports show open was longer than even we expected.
Yeah,
that was a little like, come on, Christmas is almost here. But they do that show every day, and it was just part of their show.
It was. And, funny enough, I actually had a chance at Michael Boganowski's commitment. For those of you who don't know, I taught at Junction City last year. And so during his recruiting process, we all had a pretty good idea he was going to pick Oklahoma, but he actually did the same thing. And so I kind of had a little hunch that they might push the announcement towards the end of the actual show. For recruiting junkies like me, it was fun to watch. There's a lot of guys like, oh, and I think the cool part about that, when you put the whole Linkon Cure thing into context, is that every single one of those kids that they were talking about, and Ohio State and USC and Michigan and all these big schools that are looking at those kids they were talking about, guess what? Linkon Cure is better and more highly rated than every single one of those kids. And so when you kind of put that into that context, it should make you feel kind of good that Linkon Cure made the decision to stay at home because, man, this kid is just an absolutely special talent.
Yeah. This is a perfect example of how much more advanced and sophisticated the recruiting analyst network is nowadays. I mean, 10 years ago, you'd heard about this kid. We'd tell 24/7 or whatever our company was all about him. And he'd be a 3-star, a high 3-star, because we raved about him. But now with all these camps, Linkon was able to go to 7-on-7 camps, which I don't even know when those became a major thing, and just blew up when people saw him in person going against really highly ranked recruits. It was evident that he was special. And it didn't surprise any of us that he ended up a 5-star because that seemed inevitable. What's amazing is he's one of 2 5-stars in the state of Kansas, the second-ranked tight end in the country and the second-ranked player in the state. It's a really special year for recruiting in Kansas.
It is. I don't know the last time. This would be a question for Wally. He's down in Goodland right now covering the event for us. But I don't know the last time that Kansas had a 5-star kid before Andrew Babalola and Linkon Cure. I don't know, but it can't be anytime soon. I know it hasn't been since I've been covering recruiting. And it just goes to show kind of how the stock in Kansas is ticking upwards. And Fitz, I know you talked about it in a daily delivery about some of these other schools are starting to find out that there's some players in the state of Kansas. But how crazy is it that there is a 5-star tight end, not a lineman, not a linebacker, a 5-star tight end, a skill position player in Goodland, Kansas. Now, the only reason I know where Goodland is actually I lived with someone who was from Goodland, Kansas. And so let it be known that I've known about Linkon Cure for quite a long time because of a previous relationship with an old roommate. But in Goodland, Kansas, there is a 5-star tight end. I don't think those words I would have ever expected to have said those words in the same sentence.
It's incredible. And when you watched his film, you're like, yeah, he's really good, but what's he going up against? And that's why going to camps is so important for these kids. I mean, he mentioned that he got an offer when he went to K-State's camp a year ago. And, that's when people were just beginning to catch on how good this kid is. I know my buddy Adam Kadavy, the guy I referred to as a jackass, was always raving about him. He's out in Scott City, so he's very familiar with Goodland. And, he said everything was true about this kid from off the field to on the field, how good he is. And it just he kept floating to the top. And I think if recruiting went on for another month and there was another reevaluation, he'd probably get even higher in the 5-star rankings. He just seemed like a kid that everyone sort of fell in love with, and he had some great choices here. I mean, it was clear Oregon really wanted him. They did an incredible job recruiting him, but as he mentioned in the announcement on 24/7 Sports, he gave his commitment to K-State a week ago, or more than that. He was when he left the camp. He mentioned that he didn't sleep, and he called Taylor and said, "I want you to go here." And he was a quiet commit for this whole time. And so I think those schools found out, and they started turning their attention to the next tight end on their list, and Oregon got a great one in Deshaun Brame. So another Kansas kid. It's crazy this
Yeah.
year in the state.
It is, and you bring up Desan Braham. I think that's a good point, Fitz. I think the writing was on the wall for K-State fans yesterday when Desan Braham, was it yesterday or 2 days ago? Desan Braham committing to Oregon in the morning. I kind of, I tend to think with the whole Braham situation, if Lincoln Cure and K-State had never been a match, or if Lincoln Cure didn't exist, I think K-State would have been in a great spot with Desan Braham too. Like another legacy player in Desan Braham who realized, ooh, okay, Lincoln Cure is probably going to go to K-State. I'm probably not better than Lincoln Cure, so I'm going to go somewhere else. And that's what he did. But I think K-State really started to zone in on Lincoln Cure as the summer rolled along. And, I think Oregon was a lot closer to nabbing him than maybe a lot of people in our industry think. In a VIP piece by Tom Loy that went up on our website right after the commitment talks a little bit about that. I think Oregon was in a really good spot with him. I think they felt like they were in a good spot with him until they caught wind that Lincoln was going to go to K-State. And obviously, like you said, they shifted. But this was not a recruitment that K-State had wrapped up by any means.
No, and everyone who knew he was committed was still a little leery of what could take place in the course of a week. But this seems to be another level-headed, mature young man that has joined the program. I see a comment over here from Patrick Scott. Avery was the key, and in some ways that's really true. I think having the connection to Avery and Dylan Edwards really helped him in understanding that as a top player, you can go to Kansas State. It's fulfilling no matter what they say. And he's run into it also of people telling him the Big 12 won't exist in a few years. I mean, he just said that's not true. I'm going to go there and play. And Avery is a great ambassador for K-State, but Dylan was the perfect ambassador for this recruitment because he was a guy that got caught with stars in his eyes and ended up going out of state and realized it was a mistake and came home. So his message to Lincoln was Oregon might be really cool, but in a year you might think differently. And I think that all paid off. This team, starting with Avery Johnson, does an incredible job of recruiting for the coaches. They're giving great assists and the level of social media connection these players all have to each other, not even recruiting reason. Just, I bet you Avery has attachments to quarterbacks all around the country from his camps that he went to. And it's just incredible how well connected these kids are with each other and who's coming up through the ranks.
And I think you bring up Avery Johnson. It's a great point because Avery Johnson has played, Fitz, I'd have to go back and look, but 6 games? He played in 6 or 7 games last year as a true freshman. Any other normal true freshman who plays in 6 or 7 games, we would say, oh, I'm sure the connection, the friendship helped him with the recruitment process. But no, I don't think it's the friendship or the connection. As much as it is, they're both Kansas kids, it's the fact that Avery Johnson is a really good quarterback. And Linkon Cure wants to go to an offense that has a really good quarterback. And I think it's important for people to understand that while Linkon Cure has a chance to be a program changing type of talent, there's a good chance that these guys maybe only play 1, max 2 years together, right? Lincoln is going to be a senior this year at Goodland. Avery's going to be a sophomore. Well, you don't have to be a mathematician to realize that Avery will be a junior when Lincoln is a freshman. And if Avery Johnson is as good as a lot of people think he is, myself included, he might only be here until after his junior season. And if Lincoln, maybe isn't fully ready to play as a freshman, I think he will be, but maybe he's not in the eyes of the coaches, then those two might not actually play together. So it's the fact that they're able to see what the school has done for each individual prospect, I think, is a major reason why the decision was made for Lincoln. He saw what K-State has done for Avery and is doing for Avery, and he wants to follow in those footsteps.
Yeah, it's a really good point. People aren't doing the math of when these guys will cross paths. And the question becomes, how long will Avery Johnson play college football? He's gone through his freshman season. I liked how Lincoln said the next 3 or 4 years. So he's already thinking NFL. But that's something to worry about later down the road.
Right.
I'll say this. One of the things I thought I would get asked about 24/7 Sports was by 24/7 on their YouTube show was the use of tight ends at Kansas State and how it's evolved. I think Ben Sinnott opened the door here as much as anyone else by showing this is what this K-State offense can do with the tight end if it's the right tight end, if it's the right mix of being physical and athletic and being able to play multiple positions within a snap, go from a fullback to a wideout, which is how K-State uses its tight end. I think he was a great messenger here for Linkon Cure to say, holy cow, they just turned a former walk-on into a second-round pick.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really helped K-State.
I do too. And Fitz, let's just talk about it and say it how it is. In this part of the country, tight end is a hotbed topic. Travis Kelce has completely changed the way that we look at and talk about tight ends. You didn't used to see tight ends lining up in the slot. You didn't used to see tight ends even lining up that much as fullback, because when you needed a fullback, you had a fullback. Well, the days of the fullback are pretty much gone. And the days of tight ends lining up in the slot, being a mismatch on linebackers are here. And I think, I'm sure you could talk to Linkon more about this, but, these high school kids, they watch professional football. They watch college football. So I agree. Ben Sinnott at K-State is a perfect example of probably how K-State wants to use Linkon Cure. But when you see Linkon Cure, it is impossible not to think and compare him to the great Travis Kelce and other NFL tight ends that have the exact same type of skill set that he possesses right now.
Well, let's bring this question up from college football fan 146. What are your thoughts on using him as a split out reviver? I like that. A receiver with his speed. I think that's something they will do a lot with it. They did it with Ben Sinnott, who his one knock going to the league was his speed. Now you got a guy that has the speed, but can he add in the physicality of a Ben Sinnott and the ability to go get the ball and run routes really well? I mean, that's what Ben does. That's kind of like Kelce. Just run smart routes and know what you're doing out there and feel that defense to find those gaps. He does it extremely well, but you're right. Travis Kelce has evolved the position. He's shown what a really athletic tight end can do. And he also holds up his own as a blocker. Even if it's more of a screener than a blocker, that kind of diversity can help you a lot. Now you got a tight end, that can do a bunch of stuff, can line up as a tight end up as a wide out. Dylan Edwards in the backfield as a running back goes to the slot. And suddenly you've pushed 4 or 5 wide on a defense that might have been prepared for double tights and a single back. And it can really do things for an offense like K-State. And that's exactly what K-State wants to do with this offense under Connor Riley and Matt Wells.
And I think when you look at what the offense is doing and the type of players that they're bringing in, Fitz, like it's completely different than at the start of Chris Kleiman's tenure. And, your Life of Fitz podcast with Joe Kleinerman was really interesting because he talked a little bit about the type of kids that they were bringing in. And I think the knock on Chris Kleiman when he got here, I know was, he's not going to be able to recruit the Power 5, right? That's what everybody said. And here we are, Fitz. Here we are. They have completely changed the way that people think about football recruiting when it comes to K-State. Gone are the days of K-State maximizing at an 85 grade on 24/7, the number one recruit being an 85 grade. That used to be good and fine, and there's been plenty of players who have developed. K-State is still a developmental program. But here we are, 2 out of the last 3 classes with guys who probably should be a 5-star. Avery probably should have been a 5-star. Finished with a 94. Linkon Cure at a 98 as of right now. I mean, the talent level that they have brought in over the last 3 seasons, and even throw in Caden Massey and Gus Hawkins from this year, the soon-to-be freshmen who 6'6" and 6'8" respectively will anchor the left tackle and right tackle positions for years to come when they eventually crack the rotation. I mean, the level of talent that they're bringing in on the offensive side of the ball, especially. K-State lost Colin Klein, its number 1 recruiter. It's prodigal son of Manhattan, and still found a way to have and secure the greatest commitment that the school has seen in terms of recruiting numbers. There are no words to talk about how important this is for Chris Kleiman.
It's crazy. When when Colin left, it was a shock to the system because the people immediately worried about Avery. I wasn't worried about Avery. I knew they were close, but he didn't come to K-State because of Colin Klein. That's one of the things you mentioned Chris Klein is doing a good job with. He's selling the program.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who's recruiting him. And I think A&M honestly thought they had the inside by hiring Colin Klein to get Linkon Cure, and it didn't work out that way. Oregon, as I said, did a great job, but the tie to home is strong with players in this part of the country. It just means more to put that purple on, just as it would be to put on the green in Oregon if you're an Oregon kid. And so you grow up with it. It means a lot. It isn't a video game. It's not about your idols. It's about where you want to spend the rest of your college career. And I think Linkon Cure is going to be making plays in Manhattan for years to come.
He is, Fitz. I have control, and I can put a comment up here. I want to put this up here because I think this is funny. It says 65% confidence is all we needed. Fitz, would you like to address the comment from our friend Joel?
Joel, I sometimes say things to inspire the masses. I knew he was committed at the time I made that comment. So, but the family really wanted it secret. So if I come out and said 99%, you would all go, oh, he's committed. So yeah, 65, and then it became what, 85, 90? I don't even know.
Yeah, I think the 65% was just a random number you had in your brain, and you were like, I think it's 65%. We'll say it's 65.
I don't script these things. I started that sentence. I'm like, oh God, I got to pick a number. 65.
Yeah. Again, it just goes back to one of those things, man. Like it is an incredible day for K-State recruiting because, again, I go back to the Colin Klein situation. Fitz, like you said you weren't worried about Avery Johnson, but I can tell you there were people who were worried about
Absolutely.
Avery. And how crazy would it have been in today's modern age of the transfer portal if you lose Avery Johnson? Well, now you have to start completely over, and you have to look at the quarterback position, and then all the dominoes fall. And does Linkon Cure commit to K-State without Avery Johnson, right? Like, who's to say? And so the fact that they were able to recover from Colin Klein leaving and convince Linkon Cure, because that was still in the heart of his recruitment process.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he talked about it on the podcast with Wally when they did that this spring. He was close to committing to K-State before Colin Klein left, and then he left, and he had to start over. And the fact that K-State was able to recover from that just goes to show, like you said, that this program is more than just about one guy. And I think Matt Wells, you have to give credit to Matt Wells, because if you go back and look at his timeline, when he took that job as offensive coordinator, 2 or 3 days later, he was on a plane, wheels up, heading to Goodland. And it was clear that he was priority number one all along. Linkon was priority number one when it came to that staff and their recruiting board. And now I feel like the summer chapter is closed. There might be a few more guys that they're waiting on, but the summer chapter is closed, and they start their second chapter and trying to finish out this class. But whatever happens the rest of the way, I mean, it's a win. This class is automatically a win because you landed Linkon Cure.
Well, let's also point out that the success of the tight ends, the way they're used, the way they execute and have gotten so good, falls on the shoulders of coaching, and that's Brian LePack. He's kind of been the silent guy in all of this. Working with Linkon more on the how we're going to use you type things. And I think it was a really effective effort by the entire recruiting team, and Clint Brown, the new he's not recruiting coordinator, roster management guru, because that's where we're at in college sports. It also played a big role. This is the most dynamic group of recruiters K-State's had that also can coach. That's the amazing thing. It's sometimes you give one to get the other. You'll get a great coach that doesn't recruit as well, or you get the great recruiter who's kind of useless as a coach. Chris Kleiman's finding guys that can go close the deal and prepare a player to win games on Saturday. It's pretty cool.
They like the people. They love Coach Kleiman. Like, again, I go back to that podcast you did with Kleinerman. Like, they wouldn't stay if they didn't like their boss. And that's true for any form of work, but these guys are staying because they like their boss and they trust the process. And when you have any kind of organization, whether it be a company, a coaching staff, a team, and everybody is pulling on the same end of the rope, then they're very dangerous. And I think right now K-State is in that spot where they're hitting their stride when it comes to recruiting. They're hitting that stride when it comes to bringing in talent. And we know they can coach X's and O's football. If they're able to consistently bring in not this kind of 5-star talent, but the kind of talent that we've seen them bring in on a somewhat consistent basis over the last 3 years now, I think we're going to really see this program take the next step, because if you have the talent and you have the coaches who can do the X's and O's, that's 2/3 of the battle.
Yep, you're right. I think this one's for you, Cole. I'll let you address this.
Yes, Christian. I don't know. People are finding my like not so personal, now kind of personal life. It's kind of a weird thing when you have social people on social media who recognize your face. Yes, Christian. I don't know.
He
Hopefully I
coaches
didn't get
baseball. He coaches football. I don't know what else you do.
Hopefully I didn't get kicked out of the game where he saw me. That would have been
Did you get kicked out of a game recently?
No, but I should have. I
Okay.
should have multiple times. It's
Let's
just
see.
kind of the lay of the land.
Let's bring this one up from LX3000. That sounds like a new car. Was a bit worried when Linkon talked about how much he loved the Pacific Northwest, how beautiful it was, etc. Glad he realized you can still go visit and vacation and still play at KSU. That's a valid point. And I come back to Dylan Edwards saying, yeah, I got caught up in the Golden Dome and then, going to play for Uncle Dion, but I needed to be here. This is what fits me. And I think Linkon probably came to that same conclusion. He is right, though. The Pacific Northwest is beautiful. But you're not going to go there and on a hiking scholarship. So you're going to go play football. And Dan Lanning's a heck of a coach from Kansas. So I don't think this was as locked up as fans of the losing schools are going to want to say. Losing schools, the ones he didn't pick. But it also, I never felt like he was going somewhere else. Did I get less confident? Did I really get to 65% at some point? Yeah, I did. But at the end of the day, we kind of knew this is what he wanted to do. And that's why I think K-State felt so good about being the last visit, the last in his ear. And I think they got it done.
But let's just be honest. I mean, Oregon would not have been a bad place for him to end up, right? Like, I know we cover K-State, but I mean, that is a program that is trending in the upwards trajectory. I absolutely love Dan Lanning as a coach. I think that he has a chance to be a power in the new Big Ten. It's not like with Dylan Edwards when he decided to go to Colorado last year. It was one of those things where it was like everybody was like, "Ooh, is that really going to be a good landing spot?" Obviously it didn't matter. And I think that's what's really important in this, is because, again, you have a guy who you convinced to stay home. And at Fitz, we have to bring this up because allegedly, anyway, one of the 4 finalists was KU. He took an official visit there. I know that there's been a lot of back and forth on social media about, did KU have a shot, or was it just kind of a courtesy visit? Did he just go to hang out with his brother? I'm kind of the belief that it was more along the lines of, it was a courtesy visit. He wanted to make sure that he gave them the respect. They were the other in-state school. They were recruiting him for a very long time. So he's going to go and hear them out, hear their sales pitch. But I don't think he ever had any indication of ever going to KU.
I don't think so early, but I think he was willing to hear what they had to say and wanted to hear what they had to say out of respect to KU and Lance Leipold and his ability to coach. I think other versions of KU football just wouldn't have got that visit. They just wouldn't. And so I think that says a lot right there. But yeah, he got a little testy at times, but at the end of the day, I think staying home was really important to him. The one thing I can't explain in his recruitment, speaking of Colorado.
Yeah.
Why did they never really show serious interest on a kid who I believe is closer to the Boulder campus than the Manhattan campus?
Correct.
It's crazy.
Correct. That doesn't make a lot of sense, does it?
No.
Especially when they already recruited Dylan Edwards, an in-state kid, right, from Kansas. Honestly, Fitz, I think it really has to do with what Deion Sanders values, and I don't think he values Kansas. Oh, that kid plays in Kansas. Nah, he's not that good. We'll go recruit somebody from Texas. We'll go recruit somebody from Dallas. We'll go get a tight end from California who's better than this this kid who plays 3A football in Kansas. Right? I don't know that to be a fact, but it sure feels like that, doesn't it? I mean, how can you not? Surely they knew who he was. You don't 5-star 5-star talents do not grow on trees. And so when there's one within a realistically what a 5-hour radius from you, to not even go out and watch him play or kick the tires or come to the school and talk to him, you don't have to offer him. But I don't think he ever once mentioned Colorado even reaching out to him, which to me is just unexplainable. Besides the obvious explanation, as somebody brings up right here, it is because Dion is a bad coach.
I want to point out to all the Colorado fans that might watch this, Street Crawler said that, not me. Street Crawler. I'll give you his address, his phone number. Street Crawler, I'm going to need that from you, and you can get hold of him for saying that. They get a little upset. Oh, right. Also, Robbie's in on that, so go get Robbie. Not Cole, not Fitz, none of that. Those are the troublemakers. Here's a good one, though, from John Bolton. Will Ancio is in that room. They've done a good job of recruiting tight ends. They like their young tight ends. And Garrett Oakley is a player, and Will Swanson is just the steady Yeti. They got a good combo for this year, but they've got more coming. And if you really want to have this tight end be such an important part of your offense, you better keep them coming. You can't let up and miss a tight end in any class. It's kind of like a quarterback. If you want to run this offense effectively, you better have a tight end, because if you don't have a good quarterback, good tight end, and a multifaceted running back like a DJ Giddens or Dylan Edwards, this offense doesn't go. It just doesn't. It doesn't work the way it's supposed to, and I think they're very cognitive of that.
You're right. I think when you look at the offense right now, all of the backups, all of the starters have backups who are very similar to them, right? You look at Avery Johnson. Well, they just brought in Roberson to be the backup quarterback. A lot of the similar skill sets, so they don't have to change the offense that much. You look at DJ Giddens and Dylan Edwards. I would put them as a 1-2 punch. Well, behind them, you've got a guy in Joe Jackson, kind of a combination of both of them. You look at the tight end spot, what they're trying to do. Garrett Oakley, very, very similar to Ben Sinnott, right? And so obviously along the offensive line is just everybody looks the same. They're gigantic. They're gigantic, 6'5", 300 pounds across the board. So what they're trying to do on the offensive side is look to a model, recruit to a model, see if you can get the exceptional talents of players that fit that model and go with it. And I think it's a great strategy by coaches who are not planning on leaving. Now, if there's a head coaching position that opens up, sure. If there's an offensive coordinator position that opens up and Brian LePack feels like he needs to leave, then he's going to leave. But until that moment happens, he's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And so they're building quality depth. I don't think Linkon Cure is going to be a depth piece, Fitz. I truly believe this is a kid who has a chance to come in and contribute immediately. But again, it just goes to show that the quality depth is being built. And this is just another example, because if he doesn't have to play, that's not a bad thing. If he doesn't play, it's not a bad thing.
No, it's not. He might be one that could play, but they might have two tight ends in front of him who are really good and more experienced. We'll see how that plays out. One other topic before we shut this down, they announced who's going to Big 12 Media Days for Kansas State. I assume you saw that list.
Mm-hmm.
I expressed my surprise that Avery was going, because it's not typical of a guy who's not the returning starter, who is a sophomore. Heck, Iowa State's leaving their returning starter sophomore quarterback at home to take him. But I think this is another indication of the faith they have in Avery Johnson, not just as a player, but as a leader and as a person, that none of this will faze him. I mean, this is an overwhelming experience for some players. There's media all over the place. It's going to be on an NFL field, and it's a cool event, but it can be a lot. And I've just never come across a kid who I thought as a true freshman, maybe Deuce, who could do this, or Tyler Lockett. They're just cruise in there and just handle it like a pro, but Avery can. I think it's very notable that as a sophomore quarterback who hasn't been the official starter outside of the bowl game, that he gets to go to Big 12 Media Days. That is such a stamp of approval from the coaching staff and Chris Kleiman. It's hard to express.
I look forward to comparing him to other Big 12 quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I didn't look at the list for the other schools, but I'm
All
sure Jalen Daniels is going, Shedeur Sanders is going, Cam Rising. I want to compare him to the rest of the Big 12 quarterbacks because his maturity level is probably going to be greater than a lot of them. I don't know for sure. I really don't think Avery Johnson is going to have his highlights on an Apple Watch chain. Don't quote me on that. I
I
don't think
will.
that's going to happen.
I will.
But what can I say? All I know is Avery Johnson. I mean, again, if people aren't listening to us by now, look at that list and open your eyes because the hype is not just hype; they're expectations now with Avery
Yep.
Johnson.
Yep. Let's see what David Kilgore here is. Appreciate the super chat here. Good evening, gentlemen. Do you guys realistically think the Cats can win the Big 12 and compete nationally? Those are two different things. I think it's so important for the Big 12, whether it's 2 or 3 teams in the playoff, to go win a game. Just win. Don't be one and done and come home. If you got the bye and you're in the final, 8 or whatever, you need to win that. If you're in the first round, you need to win that. I think Kansas State is very equipped to win the conference this year, and Utah is very equipped to win the conference this year. And there's about, you could say, 8 other schools that could do it.
Yeah.
That's why Big 12 football is a blast. You don't have, oh, yeah, they're going to win. Ohio State, yeah. And now it's switched from Alabama to Georgia. Yeah, they're going to win. They're going to win. And if you look at the odds out of Vegas, there is no seated confidence in 2 schools as high in the Big 12 as in other conferences that they expect teams to win. In fact, there's a lot of right in the middle, like below the 5-digit odds of 10,000 or more. I think K-State and Utah are both in the 500s in odds. That makes it a pretty decent bet. But I think those will be the 2 teams and that are in Arlington. And the only thing I'm confident about that pick with is those won't be the 2 teams because that's Big 12 football. I mean, it's easy to pick them, but the season happens and the games count. Every week you're going to get challenged. I think that's going to be some of the biggest adjustment for the new schools coming in, as it was for the other schools that came in. Every campus takes football seriously. Now that Kansas is truly invested, every campus in this conference West Virginia is tough to play at. Iowa State's a nightmare. Oklahoma State is an amazing venue. The TCU fans will get after you. The Baylor fans are wonderful. This conference is just a grind in football and basketball. But yeah, I do think K-State can win the conference, and I do think K-State can get into that, round of 8 as a bye if they win the conference and maybe advance a game or 2. Do I think they're going to win a national title? Look, the 12-team playoff changes the whole dynamic. It really does. But there's a realistic thing here about the type of interior linemen some of these programs get to the rest. And that's really what separates college football the most.
I agree. And Fitz, I want to bring this up because our friend Bud Elliott from 24/7 Sports, he tweeted out about an hour ago, 22 schools currently have a commitment from a top 100 recruit on 24/7 Sports. He says, remember when NIL was going to make all the good players go to just 2 to 3 teams, and it was the Goodfellas laugh of the guy laughing gif, because it's true, right? We thought, a lot of people thought, oh, NIL, it's going to make all the best players go to the best schools. But here we are, Fitz. We're talking about Kansas State competing in the college football playoff after they just landed a 5-star tight end. And this is 2 years removed from that new NIL legislation. I don't think any of us would have predicted. I remember sitting here doing a podcast with you. It would have been, goodness, 3 summers ago. We're talking about, is K-State going to end up in the Mountain West? I mean, we had no idea what the future of college athletics looked like, let alone did we think that Avery Johnson would come to K-State, that K-State would be able to consistently land these highly rated players and have sustained success in a new conference. I mean, it's been a wild few years in Kansas State athletics.
It's only going to keep this up. I mean, it really is. I see a very bright future here. I love this new conference. I think this is going to be really good for Kansas State, for Utah, for Oklahoma State, Iowa State, Kansas. It makes this conference even more competitive. And while Oklahoma ruled the conference for many years, that kind of went away. And then it became much more of a wild card, and Texas finally found the right coach, and he got him to the Big 12 title into the playoffs. But I still think the conference is going to be just as good in football. I really do. I think the schools they're bringing in can elevate that. And I think Utah can be a national player along with the programs I listed and others. I mean, don't write off BYU. Don't write off UCF. UCF is scary. Houston's scary with Willie Fritz over the next 5 years if he can start keeping talent at home. So, yeah, it's not the brand. It's not the big brands in this conference. I always say everyone goes to the Strip in Las Vegas to stay in the big resorts. I do. But Circa is now downtown. It's carved out its own position. And I kind of feel like the Big 12 is the Circa right now. We're going to do our own thing, and we're going to emphasize this and this. Now, speaking of Bud Elliott, he thinks the conference should completely lean into sports betting and have a sports betting expert on broadcast, just as you have a rules expert. I think that's brilliant, because if you win over the sports betting crowd as the games to watch because they're entertaining, you're going to get a lot of ratings for that.
You can. And it again, you talk about Vegas, Fitz. It has me fired up for Big 12 Media Days. I've never been to Vegas before. Let it know. And all the people out there watching, I will be making my first ever appearance in Las Vegas as we attempt to cover Big 12 Media Days, the largest Big 12 Media Days in the history of the Big 12. No longer sponsored by Old Trapper, which I found very frustrating. I don't even know what the new one is. It's like a cereal, maybe.
I think it's frozen pizza.
Or a frozen pizza. That's right. Tostinos. You think Linkon Cure eats any Tostinos pizzas?
I don't know. I don't even know. I'm just so heartbroken. I don't get to see the Old Trapper guy.
Yeah.
I don't know what Totinos is. I don't care. I want Old Trapper.
If they sell it at Walmart, I know Linkon Cure, getting back to the whole reason we're doing this live. If they sell it at Walmart, they've been there, because what do we know? They do have Walmart in Goodland, Kansas. That might be about the only thing.
Well, hold on. David's just bringing the thunder here. He's a Broncos fan too. Is Will Howard going to be the starting quarterback at Ohio State? And how do you guys see him doing up there? Is Will Howard going to be the starting? Okay. Yeah, I think so. I mean, he kind of walked into a similar situation though, although their quarterback, it's like last year. Their quarterback, I guess, is a true freshman who's supposedly really good. Avery was obviously good. Will's a great quarterback. He might actually fit the Big Ten better. Not being asked to, run the ball as often, although he can do that and just distribute. You got to be honest here. His level of weapons and the number of them will go up. Ohio State's one of the programs that gets those kind of guys, and they get a lot of great receivers. I'm really excited to see what Will Howard does with Ohio State. Great kid, great young man. It just was obvious to everyone in Manhattan who the starting quarterback was going to be this year, because you couldn't ask him to wait in the wings again with the transfer portal out there. So you had to make the move to him. And I think everyone at K-State wishes Will the best.
I think there's a good chance that Will Howard ends up in New York for the Heisman Trophy ceremony if Ohio State is in the playoff. Like, if they're in the playoff and if they win the Big Ten, I don't think there's any question. If they win the Big Ten, that means they're would be 13-0. And he's up there because they are probably a top 3 team in the country. And you just don't have, with no Marvin Harrison there anymore, you just don't have receivers or running backs in New York if your team is undefeated. So if that happens, Will Howard will be there. I also think there's a good chance that if K-State makes a college football playoff and wins the Big 12, that Avery Johnson is there. And could you imagine a world in which Avery Johnson and Will Howard are both on Heisman ballots? Not necessarily in New York, but on Heisman ballots. I think that's also a realistic possibility if K-State has the amount of success that a lot of people around the country think they're going to have. That sure would be something to watch.
I agree 100%. Thank you, Cole Carmody. I can't believe you didn't have anything going on today.
This is literally a first. I was talking to someone and I was like, yeah, I don't have anything planned today. I cleared my schedule because I knew that it was Linkon Cure Day. I sent out a tweet this morning of just 4 pictures. It was Matthew McConaughey, some random Cure logo, and then like a little guy like scratching his chin, wondering which way to go, and then a picture of sunlight. And I really wonder if people thought I was on drugs or if they understood that it was supposed to say Linkon Cure Decision Day, because Lincoln and Matthew McConaughey Cure and then Decision Day.
That's it for this live. Cool. We need to talk. No, that I'm looking forward to Vegas, brother. I'm glad you're going. As a preview of that, I'm going to hype the Life of Fitz podcast next week. Is with Tim Weiser. I recorded that this afternoon. So there's a holiday this week. I don't know if you're aware of that. And then we're all leaving for Vegas 1 week from today. Well, in fact, this time next week, I don't know about Cole. I will be in Vegas. I will not be in the Bellagio fountains yet, but I will be in Vegas. Looking forward to it, Cole.
All right.
That's it for this live. We'll have our podcast later in the week. We're going to try to get that lined up. The holiday just doesn't do favors for anyone. It's nice to blow things up, but it's blowing up our schedule. Thanks for watching. We got over 1,100 people in here. Absolutely amazing. We'll see you next time on the GoPowercat Live, and make sure you check out all of our regular video content, including daily deliveries and other podcasts. Thanks for watching.